Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I went heavy on him. I bought yellow autos that were doing 20 at the time that sold for 200. And you know, the true yellow I bought for maybe 7, sold it for like 25. So just like the spread of like the hype just increases tremendously for ink.
All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Episode 2 of Cards and Content. First off, I want to give everybody so much love who reached out, commented, gave any feedback, recommendations, interview guest ideas, segment ideas, whatever it may be. Episode 1, the feedback was great. Took all the comments. Brian and I spent some time reviewing those, just discussing the different ideas. So first off, wanted to start the episode just by giving thanks to everybody who has listened so far. But as we get into episode 2, got to start with the one thing on my mind today. And it will get us into, we'll talk more about it later as we get into our guest for today, which I'm beyond excited for. This is one I think you guys will get a real treat out of. Somebody I've known for a little while through the card space. I'm really excited for this discussion because it's a lot of things I'm super passionate about. So excited to get into that here later. But one thing on my mind today is, we were talking, the guest, I'll get into it now. It's my guy, GabeyCardStacks from Twitter. A+ guy, super big in the college sports world for cards, whether that's women's basketball, college football, you name it. He pretty much has it down, and excited to bring him on here and talk with him as the draft comes up, March Madness comes up. So we'll get into that more later. But we were having a conversation, and internally we're talking about this around the NFL draft is around the corner. And for me as a college football fan, the NFL draft is awesome. I love it. Very intrigued by the combine, by pro days, who's moving up, NFL draft day trades, Thursday of the NFL draft. Just something I've enjoyed for a long time. I remember back in the day, as I was getting into the cards, spending that time watching the NFL draft, listing cards on draft day, just hanging out with friends, ripping packs. Back in the day, you used to be able to get products like Prism draft picks and Contenders draft picks and Elite draft picks. Those products were normally out by the time the draft would come around, so you could rip those, list some of the first rookie cards of a lot of these guys, and have those available for sale come draft night. The nice part about draft night, and this is what I want to get into on today's point, is you've got accumulation of NFL fans when their player gets drafted wanting cards of those players, and college collectors, people like me who love the college cards. So when a guy like Travion Henderson, I've seen him mocked. I saw one today, I think one of the experts had him going to like 24, 25 range to like the Vikings. So now you've got a guy like me who collects Travion Henderson, wants Travion Henderson cards, and you've got Vikings fans who are like, hey, this is our first round draft pick. He's going to be our starting running back. This is a big deal. Let me get some Travion Henderson cards. So you've got two fan bases fighting for the same one supply of cards. You don't have pro football cards out yet. You're a ways away from that kind of stuff until we get into Score, Donruss, stuff like that. So the idea is having stuff available for sale when these guys get drafted. There's a couple places for this. Obviously, Whatnot, eBay, ComC are a couple that come to mind. Obviously, we sell a lot on Whatnot, so having a supply there pretty consistently in our store or on our live feeds is super helpful. Having things on eBay, one of the biggest marketplaces, probably the biggest marketplace in the entire sports card world. Having those cards available for sale for purchase immediately on draft night. And then ComC, a place where you can buy cards and sell them immediately without even having to touch the card. Potentially some, check out my cards flips on draft day. I know my guy Gabe will get into that and talk more about why he uses ComC. I know he's a big advocate for them. So just this idea that as we buy a decent amount here, and as we're processing inventory, is there stuff we want to hold to the side for draft days? Like, who's moving up the draft boards? Is Jackson Dart going to be a higher pick? For us, which Buckeyes are going to go in the first round? Is Shadur going to end up being a top pick? Does Cam Ward fall? Does Cam Ward go 1? Like, whatever that looks like, having those cards available when the draft comes, having them available for purchase, I think is going to lead to a good opportunity to transact and make deals happen, and could potentially lead to some flips. We were talking here, with our team. One guy personally I think could make a splash on draft day is Will Howard. I think the way Will Howard led Ohio State later in the year, obviously on that playoff run, beating the teams, he had to beat to win a national title. Obviously, you've got a lot of talent on that team, but Will Howard, I think led a heck of a few games there to help Ohio State win a national title. I think he's getting some conversation with, NFL GMs. I don't think he's going to be first pick by any means. I don't think he's going to be a first rounder by any stretch of the imagination. But I think there'll be, you guys know this, and I know my guy Gabe will talk about this. We'll probably get into some of the Spencer Rattler conversations. That was a guy that was highly recruited out of high school, gets drafted to the Saints. Before a guy hits, the off-season or, the off-season camps after they get drafted, there's a lot of hype. Everybody here knows this. There's a lot of hype around a lot of quarterbacks, right? You're hearing this conversation that Joe Milton could get traded or Hendon Hooker could get traded. The sports card hobby, that's one thing for sure, is there's a lot of hype around a lot of guys. But ultimately, not all of them can start. Not all of them will be good. Not all of them can win playoff games. Not all of them can win MVPs or win Super Bowls. But the offseason loves to hype up cards. We've lived through Kenny Pickett and, Desmond Ridder, and we've lived through those off seasons where those guys were hyped, and then it was Stroud, Richardson, Bryce Young, and this off season it'll probably be Jane Daniels, Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, Drake May, right? They'll all be super hyped this offseason going to the national, but not all of them will win a lot of games next year, and not a lot of them will start the following year. So I think that, a guy like Will Howard could have a little bit of buzz, especially for us here locally, right? Guy won a national title. That's big in Columbus. Hasn't happened in 10 years. So I think if he ends up getting drafted higher than some might anticipated, could be good. So again, making those potential plays, a lot of the things on my mind today is going to be around the NFL draft, the ability to have those cards for sale come draft day, making some plays on some guys that could potentially move up the draft boards, get drafted earlier than expected. Those are the kind of things I'm looking at today. So curious if you guys are making any plays, if there's anybody you guys are looking at that could sneak up the draft boards, any names you're hearing, any plays that, you guys are making. Would love to hear those plays from you guys. So drop those comments down below. Let me know who you guys are making plays on. But also, if you guys have not already, I just want to shameless plug here. We've been posting some content on Instagram. It's Cards and Content on IG. Make sure you guys check out that page. Hopefully, we'll have some more content coming soon on there. But we're also going to start soliciting some Q&A. I want to do a Q&A here soon. This is one of my favorite things we used to do on Card Talk. We used to have episodes dedicated to question and answer. So if you guys have not already, check us out on IG, Cards and Content. We'll have some cool stuff there soon. Hopefully some giveaways. I'll have a giveaway later in today's episode as well. So excited to get into that. But speaking of giveaways, one of the places we give away a lot of stuff is trade nights. And trade nights started this year for us. We did the one with Ohio State men's basketball, but our first one here in Grove City, where our shop is, was for Hobby Rip Night, Topps Hobby Rip Night. I want to get into this. We're recording this a little early because of the travel this weekend and make sure we get this episode out on Mondays. So we're a few days removed from Hobby Rip Night, but Hobby Rip Night, I got to give Topps a lot of love on this. I think, there was, especially in my world, right, a lot of questions on what does Topps and Fanatics mean for the future of hobby shops. What does that look like for, brick and mortar? Fanatics obviously has such a big online presence, especially in their memorabilia space, their clothing business. And I've got to give them a lot of credit for the Topps Hobby Rip Night thing. I think Topps has done an amazing job on some of these hobby shop led incentive, ideas. Hobby Rip Night being really the big one, MVP buyback being another one. But this idea of Hobby Rip Night that all Topps hobby shops throw a trade night at the same time. Massive, basically, trade night in the hobby across the country, across the world. Topps has taken this global as well. You see major athletes showing up at these. Paul Skeens, I think Paul Skeens and Jackson Holiday were at the same hobby rip night. Jake Daniels was at one. In the past, you've had Tom Brady. Michael Rubin went to multiple. I saw that on social. Just what a cool moment for the hobby and for Topps to use their relationships with athletes. Unfortunately, we have not had any yet. I'm sure getting Paul Skeens to Columbus, Ohio is probably not the easiest task in the world. So I don't fault Topps for that. But obviously, one day would love to have big names like that. Maybe even the Topps leadership team. Selfishly, would love to have them in Grove City to show them what we're building. But shout out to Topps for using their relationships with athletes to get those names in hobby shops. I saw Santiago Sports out in Jersey, I think had both of the big names from Rutgers at his new store. I think it was Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey were there. Again, just to bring that kind of attention to the industry through those athlete relations. And then to let the industry know, we're behind hobby shops, to throw a massive trade night at so many of these shops. And Topps does a good job with, arming these hobby shops with resources for these events. They send plenty of marketing materials. They send free packs. They send, decorations. They've sent slabs in the past. They've done a bunch of different things to really put effort and energy behind it with their marketing, their marketing power, their athlete relationships, their dollars, their time. It's a really, really cool thing. So to have, two of them, there's typically two per year. There's one normally in February. There's one normally in September. We've done the September one before. We've actually never done a February one. Normally for us, we just don't have a ton of space in shop to get 100+ people there. So this is actually the first time we ran one outside of the shop. We ran it at an event space 4 minutes from the shop. It was super close. Weren't really sure what to expect, right? We've never run a trade night outside of the Ohio State events we've done two with Ohio State men's basketball. Outside of those events, we've never done trade nights outside of the shop, here in Ohio. So to run those at an event space nearby, not at the shop, what does that look like? Turnout was incredible. I mean, I've got to give so much love to anybody who came to that and made that special. Packed house. We gave a lot of cool stuff away. Shout out to our friends at Roosters. We had a couple hundred wings and chips available from the best wing spot in the city at that. It was just an absolutely incredible time. Picked up some cool cards, met some cool people. It was just absolutely incredible. So to have that event, to run it, first time ever in February for us, huge success. Give so much love to Topps for that idea and backing hobby shops and putting the momentum behind hobby shops at that. And then anyone who comes out to those and makes those what they are. Now, September, I would imagine, will still be our favorite one of the year. That's usually our biggest trade night of the year. It is normally, I want to say end of September. I think it's usually the last weekend in September. It's usually that last Saturday. We've had them outside before. We've had crazy attendance at those. Our friend Stephanie, Mama Breaks, came to the last one. It was a lot of fun. We've had autograph signers at those, through our relationships with some of the Ohio State football players. We've had them in for NIL deals. They've been a ton of fun. So got to give Topps a lot of love for those, but definitely has me excited for some more, events here soon. But those have been a lot of fun, and definitely a lot of people has me excited for, future trade nights, future shows, because I feel like there was a lot of good energy around there. And one of the things I want to do on this, again, these are conversations I don't get to have a lot. We have them internally, what's hot, what's not, what are we seeing in the market? So some of these things I would love to just continue to bring to this podcast. We had a conversation, more internally about what's hot, what's not. And as always, this is not meant to be anybody's, this is not meant to be a guiding light per se for anybody. This is just more, some people always ask us, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about this? So this is just meant to be more of what we're seeing in the market. We do a decent amount of transactions between our Whatnot page, our eBay page, our shop, our website. We're pretty involved in the market. So I like to share just some of these things that we're seeing here. And we had a conversation couple days ago about, what's going well for us and what's not moving as well. We are not by any stretch of the imagination Pokemon experts, but I will tell you the first 6 weeks of the year have been COVID-like numbers for Pokemon, especially in our retail store. I would be lying if I told you Pokemon is certainly not one of the hottest things in our entire retail store. We are not Pokemon experts, so as much as I wish we knew more about Pokemon and why it is absolutely on fire, can't really give a lot of clarity there. Would love, maybe that would be a fun guest here in the future, maybe a crossing of worlds, because I started with Pokemon back in the late 90s when I was 6 or 7. But since then, I'm not super involved in it. We buy it, we sell it, but to say I really know it would be, again, that would be foolish. But I think it would be fun to have somebody on here that could maybe explain why it is absolutely on fire, because the numbers we are seeing from a transaction perspective, average transaction price, number of transactions, it is crazy. It is one of the hottest, if not the hottest thing in our store. We've also had I think as baseball gets ready to come back, you got pitchers and catchers reporting. There's a lot of guys in that 2024 class. You've got Ellie, you've got Paul Skeens right there as 2 major names. There's a lot of depth in that class. We've had a lot of success moving 2024 baseball soon. We always naturally have moved football well, but baseball, I feel like that price point per, for a lot of hobby boxes is not break the bank material. I mean, you got to get into like triple threads, gilded, definitive when you get up near that $1,000 range. But baseball has been a pretty fun mover for us. In terms of like what's not, basketball, the NBA ratings are down. We don't naturally move a lot of basketball. Cosmic has not done super well for us. Moved a little bit of Midnight, but like Prism basketball hobby boxes have come down $100+ since release. Basketball and Victor Wembanyama, I mean, my goodness, the guy's out for the year. He's got, I think they said, again, I don't want to speak like a medical expert here, but I thought somebody said it was the same type issue that Chris Bosh suffered with later in his career that ultimately, I believe, ended Chris Bosh's career. So again, not the medical diagnosis, not that medical expert here, but to see one of the biggest hyped prospects in basketball since at least Zion, if not, since LeBron, to see him out for the year as he's really the catalyst that has carried so much of the NBA product in the last 24 months. I mean, it's Victor or bust. You don't really have any major chases in 24, 25. I mean, number 1 pick, you got Bronny, like Edie, you got a couple guys, like, but nobody that's near the hype of Victor. And so to see ratings down, to see, the number 1 prospect over the last couple of years get hurt, Victor doesn't have Panini autos. He's only in Topps. Topps is unlicensed. It's just basketball has not been a recipe for success recently. So if I'm picking out what's hot right now, it's definitely Pokemon and baseball. Again, football's just been so consistent. I don't want to say it's hot right now. It's probably the most off season it's going to be because you'll get into the draft. And then basketball has been anything but exciting in our shop. So I would say that is definitely what we're seeing. But again, as always, we don't set up at shows all the time. We don't, there's a lot of things we don't do that a lot of you guys are out there doing. So if anybody's seeing anything different, what are you seeing at shows? What are you seeing in your store? What are you seeing on your, online, marketplaces? What are you seeing on social media that you're moving? We'll always love to hear, what people are seeing. So as always, drop those comments, let us know. The other thing, I know this is a content page. I saw a cool video the other day. I've got to give some love to my guy Brooks. It's Magic City Collectibles on IG. If you guys are on YouTube, we'll put the, their info somewhere around here. Brooks is a good friend. They own a card shop down in Alabama. If you watch the Dallas vlogs, we do a deal with Brooks normally every show. Sometimes our paths don't cross at those. They're out before we get there or vice versa. But Brooks owns a shop in Alabama, and I saw a video the other day. Ripped a Topps Dynasty box. He hit a booklet, and as he slowly unravels it, he realizes it's George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, and the patch is absolutely incredible. Obviously, many of you guys know I'm super into F1. F1 is one of those things I got into, kind of during the COVID days, watching the Drive to Survive documentary with my wife. It's been fun to collect because she enjoys it. So between that and the Disney stuff, it's fun because like she enjoys collecting it with me. So I've enjoyed it. She's been a big George Russell guy. I was big into Lewis in the beginning. That's the guy I've rooted for. Selfishly, I texted and I was like, hey, I got to get this card. This is incredible. And he's like, well, it's a cool moment for me. I'm going to keep it in the PC. And I'm like, dude, I totally get it. But I wanted to give so much love to him because I saw him pull it, and his reaction is crazy. I think he's opening it with his parents in the room. I think they were ripping it together, and the patch in the booklet card itself, it's a 101. It's incredible card. First time Topps has actually ever done booklets in Dynasty. They added them this year. Added some cool ones. I saw my guy Scott P1 Castle hit the Schumacher book. There's been some really, really cool booklets come out of there. There's some really cool duels, some singles. There's some great looking cards in Topps Dynasty this year. It was a bit more expensive than it's been in the years past, but some really cool additions to that. And I saw that book and just got to give a ton of love. So shout out to my guy Brooks. If you guys are not following him, make sure you check him out. Now, before we kick it over to our interview here today, this is actually we got a batch of Zion cases in. Obviously, you guys know we partner with them. They did not ask us to do this, but when I got these in, I was like, I want to give some love to those of you who are listening early on to the podcast. So I've got a Zion Slab X case here. This is a 3-row, just the black cube design. My opinion, probably my favorite of the designs. I love the black color there. We're gonna give this away. All you gotta do, this is gonna be for YouTube for now. I'll hopefully have some more for like Apple or Spotify or other places here soon. But we'll do a YouTube giveaway. All you gotta do, just drop a comment. Who would be a guest you would want to see on the podcast? That's what I want to know. Who do you guys want to see? It could be anybody at all in any aspect for card or content. Anybody we could ask some cool questions, or you would just want to hear what they have to say. Make sure you guys are subscribed on our YouTube page, Card Collector 2. Like the video, and then drop a comment on who you want to see on the page. Now, as always, this is just a disclaimer. If you're on Apple or Spotify, you won't get to see the message, but on YouTube, we normally put it up real big. As always, look out for the spam comments saying, hey, you won, kick us, or DM us, or shoot us a message on TikTok, or follow this link and add your credit card payment. We don't do any of that. We'll message you from our verified Card Collector 2 account. You'll be able to see it's us, because if you click on the profile, it'll have 1,000+ videos. So you'll be able to see it's actually us. So as always, keep an eye out for the bots or the people trying to scam you or take your personal information, because that is not what we're here to do. But time to get into the interview. I'm excited for this one. This is one I've actually been looking forward to a while, when Brian and I set up a lot of our podcasts and where we thought this would go and who we would have on here. This is one of the first people on my list. I think this will be a lot of fun, very similar to asking questions to my guy Brent in episode 1. Just a guy I have, I think extremely highly of, super knowledgeable, has a very particular set of skills and knowledge around the college card space. Good person, content creator. I'm just excited to talk about him. This is going to be a fun one. So let's get my guy GabeyCardStacks on here and see what he's got to say. All right, guys, we are back. Our second ever episode, our second ever guest, and this is one I have been looking forward to for a long time. We've got my guy Gabe here, GabeyCardStacks. First and foremost, thank you for coming on the pod.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So this is fun. We were actually in Shipshewana. Gabe was kind enough to come out here and check out the Shipshewana Card Fest. It was one of those things we had talked about for a little while. Wanted to get him out here and kind of show him what the show was about, and figured it was a perfect opportunity to also, to do this in person. We've actually not had the privilege to meet at any shows or talk in person, but we've been able to keep up online a good bit. We talk college football, college sports quite a bit. He, as you guys will soon see on this episode, this man right here knows as much as anybody I know around college sports, college football, college basketball. You name it, he knows it. It's pretty crazy. But I'll stop talking. Again, they'll see here in a second how crazy the knowledge is, and how cool you are. But I just want to start with you in terms of who you are, and how your journey into cards started?
Yeah, for sure. So, I originally just started as a kid collecting like anyone.
Yep.
Started with Pokemon, actually. Like that was
Same.
when I was 4 or 5. Graduated into sports cards, and then actually got into Yu-Gi-Oh. You're not a Yu-Gi-Oh guy.
I got into Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay.
Blue Eyes White Dragon.
Okay,
Come on,
yep,
man.
Yep. So
what is it? What's the one you put together?
Exodia.
Exodia. Yeah. So you got like the arms, the legs. You got the 5 pieces. Yeah, come on.
Yeah. So I was big into that, and then middle school I think just was too cool for it.
Now, real quick. I don't want to interrupt. Did you have the Yu-Gi-Oh? Like the card dealer you put
dual
on
disc.
The dual disc, you draw the card.
That was like, I always wanted it for Christmas, and like I just never got it. But like if you go on eBay, they're like $130. Like
wow.
I would do it for like the nostalgia for sure.
For sure.
But that was always a dream.
Sorry to interrupt. It just got me off track there.
So and from there, got out of sports cards in high school and college and all that, and then got some exposure actually. So I was close with a couple guys on the Arizona football team, and they were signing products. So my boy Paul McGlure was in Sage, and I remember him signing and like, hey, buy these packs for my autos. So I bought that in like 2016, 17, 2015 Contenders had Scooby Wright, great set. And so that was kind of my first reintroduction. But then until 2020, those were my only 2 cards I owned, and then got back in with everyone else, and just been grinding ever since. Started with $75 at a mall card show, and just been going at it.
I love it. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun because, I know we talk a good bit, but you have a lot of you've done a lot of the things that, I have done and I am into, like the college stuff, the draft, flipping on check out my cards, value boxes. So I think we have a lot of like similar experiences. So I think this is going to be a fun episode. But you say you started $75 at a mall show, something out in Arizona, I'm assuming?
Yeah, yep.
Now, I'm going to guess, just knowing you and some of the conversations we've had, value boxing, kind of flipping, working your way up. Tell me a little bit about how you got started at shows.
Yeah, so I mean, I was very new to just the new card scene. Like I didn't know that card shows were ever a thing until then, and there was one close to my house, and I was like, all right, like I'm new to this, and just at that point I was like, all right, I'll take $75, see what happens. At that point, like prices were stupid high in the market. So yeah, it was value bins, and like, all right, I'm grinding out these dollar cards and trying to post them on eBay for a couple bucks. So yeah, it was just a slow grind, and from there I think that's what kind of like laid the foundation of like doing my research and like trying to maximize that $75 and find the good buys and try to just make plays from that standpoint. So yeah, it was straight value boxes, and even now like I enjoy the value box, and like
for sure,
especially with like college cards are growing, and we'll talk about it, but like there's a lot of people there's like, oh, it's a college card, I'll throw it in the dollar bin, 100%. And it's, a Luther Burden auto or whatever, Malik Neighbors in his LSU, and not a lot of people realize that. So.
Yeah. And I feel like some of the ones we've had success with in value boxes, and I'm sure we'll get into it in a second because I know you and I've talked a lot about it lately, is like McDonald's All-American.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people see that and they're like, hey, this isn't even the college stuff. This is early stuff. This can't be worth anything. But as we'll get into here in a second, I'm sure, like there's a lot of players in there that only have signed in that. And, Cooper Flagg's obviously one of them. He's not a guy you're going to find in value boxes, but there's plenty of other players, and I'm sure you've got some stories of finding people like that in there. But yeah, the value box thing is awesome. It's honestly one of the places I recommend a lot of people like start in their journey in cards because, like you said, it's when card prices change, a lot of dealers will update their showcases. They'll find their better cards, their better players, and they'll update those. But like when a card goes in a value box, to a lot of dealers, it's like it's kind of written off. It's just like if it sells, it sells. It's a bonus. So when you're going through those value boxes, like what maybe now, maybe on your journey, like what have you looked for? What do you look for when going through a value box?
Yeah, so for that, it's really just, looking for names that I'm just at least familiar with, where, I do a lot of research on like anytime a college checklist comes out, like I know all the guys and, the background information. And then even just like, I always kind of found the value in almost like a second string running back. Like, hey, like I know if this guy gets hurt, like he's kind of the handcuff there, like there's value there. So just knowing like backups in that space, I think really helped. And then looking at just the numbered, colored stuff. I mean, you're grinding like the retail color out to increase your bankroll. So numbered, colored auto stuff, and really just taking chances, like buying Simi Fehoko autos, and it's like, all right, this is in the dollar bin, and I'm going to try to sell it for $3, $4, $5. So just you got to take a lot of chances for sure, but that's how you learn too.
That's one of the things we talked a little bit about with Brent, who was our guest on the first one, is like the grind, the time, like taking the chances, like with the value box especially. And I think this is one of the things I've observed from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like I had success with this early on, where it's like when you go through value boxes, like what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to piece lots together. So like, and I think I've seen you do this with like, you get a Bowman Sapphire rookie, you get a Bowman, pink from a blaster, you get an X-Fractor, you get a yellow auto to 75, and you put a little lot together of a player that may not sell for a lot individually, but now you've got a $15 lot on cards you bought for $4, and you kind of increase your bankroll that way. That was one of the things I had success with early on, was like building those little like player lots or team lots. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you've done this before with like Sapphire or Bowman Chrome. Like you've had success in the past buying lots like that, either on eBay auction, value boxes, stuff like that?
Yeah, so I'll usually, eBay auctions is a great place where like, you can search those consigners who are running auctions every single night, and it's like there's money to be made every single night at auctions. Every single night,
that is a play.
And then you're looking up lots and just finding them on X or Twitter and Instagram at shows, just buying those up. And then I sell. Team lots have been like with base cards. Like I'm selling, 15 Texas Bowman first base cards for $12 ship. Like I would have had to grind, quarters out of those if I were to sell them individually. So definitely lots like that. And then eventually, with a lot of inventory, if I know I'm, up on this lot, I'm like, hey, take the rest of this lot, 30 cards for $15 ship. Like I don't need to grind the rest of this out, and I can send it off to someone else.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that's again, it's a grind. Definitely takes time, but for sure, love that. Now you talk about like, hey, send it off somewhere else. One of the things you and I have both talked with, we've talked about before, and I know you use a lot and are big advocate for it, is check out my cards.
Yep.
I pre this interview, we had talked a little bit about it on the pod when I was just chatting, but the draft is coming up. You're super, super knowledgeable. I will give all of the credit in the world for this. Like you are super, super knowledgeable in the college football, basketball stuff. But Check Out My Cards is a great spot for so many things, right? Those lots you buy, value box cards at a show. But one of the things I prefaced on the beginning of this show was having cards available for sale on draft night when you've got a college team and a pro team fan looking for the same one player that is now drafted and has a smaller card pool than they will a year from now. Just want to talk a little bit about like, one, why you like Check Out My Cards and, what you've had success using it for, and then we can go down into more of the draft stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So I like Check Out My Cards just because it is so easy to just buy a card instantly and relist it, and you're never touching the card.
100%.
They handle everything. So a lot of times, honestly, I check ComC first before I even touch eBay, just because it's like, it's kind of just a card show on the internet. So you're just searching for a player, and a lot of times I'll find some undervalued cards. Maybe they're on sale. Sellers run promotions all the time. So I'm always looking at that. And then depends, I'm always a value guy. So it's like I look at a Jackson Dart Bowman first auto, maybe $60-$70 right now, but I see his base cards are like 50 cents on there. So I'll buy up the floor. I'll spend $20 on base cards, buy 30, 40 of them. And then from there, like I'm hoping draft night, like you look at obviously Caleb Williams was like number one, or like even Bo Nix and those guys from last year's class, like those were $3, $4 cards on draft night. So just buying up the floor and, getting a good amount of them and then having them ready for the draft. That's why I love the draft, and that's where
100%.
Bowman 2022 was like instrumental in my card journey, because I realized the release date was like late February, early March, around this time, 3 years ago or whatever. And it was like a lot of these guys are about to get drafted. Every fan in America is watching the draft. They want to see who their team is drafting, and there's just so many more eyeballs. The college fans are like, yay, he got excited to, or he got drafted to Minnesota. The Minnesota fans are happy. So like Jordan Addison at that time was like a huge flip for me, where it was like, that's just a match made in heaven. So there's so much hype and optimism, even for like I always joke, like the New York Giants, that's the happiest their fans are all year. Like, sorry for any Giants fans, but like there's just so much hope and optimism. Like this guy's going to turn us around, and then, you know, so I've always capitalized on that, and that was really instrumental to have those cards readily available. And my method has kind of honestly switched. At first, you know, 2022, smaller budget to work with. 2023, actually, you know who changed my thought process was Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I went heavy on him. I really liked him at UCLA. Bought, you know, true color, yellow, blue, got some gold, yellow autos. And then he went off in the Hall of Fame game in preseason, and his autos were doing 200-300. And so at that point, I was like, I think ink is the play. Like, I put a heavy emphasis on buying the autos. Like, I bought yellow autos that were doing 20 at the time that sold for 200. And, you know, the true yellow I bought for maybe 7, sold it for like 25. So just like the spread of like the hype just increases tremendously for ink. So then I kind of focused on ink, and then now, you know, even like inserts on draft night, like Bo Nix or unexpected risers, early risers, delights.
The Bowman Chrome inserts,
like those were doing like $7 on draft night, and I was buying them 50, 70 cents when he was getting first round hype. So it's cool just that you're able to go on the platform, buy up the floor, and then just save them for draft night and hopefully unload them. And then, you know, one thing that I've learned, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, is like there's so many opportunities with college cards, like off-season hype. Then you've got, you know, ranked matchups, and then you've got, you know, the Heisman chase, college football playoffs now with 12 teams, the draft. Like before, I used to think, all right, the draft, I've got to be, you know, out of these, and, you know, hopefully you can dump most of these and fire sale if, you know, they don't sell. But now so many different avenues.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I think about a lot is, you know, it's definitely not as bad as it was, but when NIL started, a lot of the commentary was, you know, these are college cards. This stuff doesn't ever hold any value. This stuff stinks. Nobody wants this stuff. But like, you know, I know you and I are both like avid college collectors. Like, I prefer Ohio State uniforms. Like, I prefer Marvin Harrison Jr. Ohio State 101s. I don't care about the Cardinals cards. Like, they don't do anything for me. And I look at that now, and it's like you said, some of these moments, like, you know, Travis Hunter has cards. He's a top 5 pick. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. Like, being able to buy those cards in the moment, and then you've got platforms like Check Out My Cards, where you now have many options to sell guys in the moment who had cards during their collegiate career. Like you said, there's the timeline to move a card and the different opportunities that arise before they even get to the NFL draft is crazy compared to what it was 5 years ago when it, you know, or even the early days of NIL. I look at it as there's a dozen opportunities to sell a Travis Hunter card before he even gets to the draft versus, again, like a couple years ago, you just didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, that was just, you know, it's been a learning like the NIL game is 2021 paper Bowman. Like, that's when it started, and it changed everything. And so it has been a learning opportunity where it's like, you know, you're buying early and you have all those exit points to try to capitalize on it. And there has been that stigma of college cards and even unlicensed cards still, but yeah, it's getting much better. And because of NIL, they're like celebrities now, and it's a big thing. I think there were a lot of big voices as well, and big players players in the NIL game at the right time. Like, love them or hate them, but Deion Sanders, like, put so many more eyeballs on the college football scene. He's got 2 top 10 picks coming up. I mean, Colorado, when I was at Arizona, that was like your homecoming game. Like, I don't think we lost to them in the Pac-10, Pac-12 era. Like, and now every game is televised. So, like, everyone's watching that. And obviously, like, Caitlin Clark for college sports and women's sports in general. So, a lot of those early in the NIL era have certainly opened up the door and I think broken down that barrier.
Here's a fun one for you. This is just a quick one-off I thought of. You know, you mentioned Caitlin Clark. Obviously, she's probably one of, if not the biggest name I can ever think of that had cards in a moment, obviously long moment, she's still going. Who do you think, looking back at 10, 15 years, had they had cards during the NIL era, had they had cards and, like, you know, they were allowed to make them, whose cards can you think of over the last 15 years? Post LeBron. LeBron's probably like, I realized he didn't go to school, so I'm thinking like LeBron. I'm thinking like maybe 06 on, because I know you and I were both in and about 06. Who do you think from like 06 on would have had the craziest card market had they had him?
There's two.
Okay.
I think Reggie Bush or Johnny Manziel.
Yeah,
I think would be the two. Maybe Zion as well. I'm not huge in that game, but obviously what he did, with the Prism market in 2020 was insane.
Yeah, and the Zion one is interesting because of the timing. Like that's as like the card market explodes. That's as COVID starts. That's all. Zion Prism base 10s got to almost $1,000. Like that was really the start of the bubble. So the Zion one is definitely interesting. Manziel and Reggie Bush are obviously two huge ones. Tebow's a guy that stands out, just the following he had. But yeah, it's hard to argue those guys. I can't think of any other like college basketball star that would have been up there during that time. Zion's probably the biggest one, but you see it now with like Cooper Flagg, like Jeremiah Smith, like Ryan Williams, Lagway, like Caleb, like Travis Hunter. It's crazy how far that space has come. I mentioned it earlier, Topps McDonald's All-Americans out. You're big into college football, college basketball. I want to kind of get your take on more of the basketball side. Who are some of the names you're seeing in the? Give the listeners 1 to 2, maybe 3 people you're keeping an eye out for in the Topps, like McDonald's All-American. Maybe some of the people that don't have as many cards. Yeah. I know you and I talked the other day because I ripped some of the McDonald's All-American.
Do you want them from this current set or
Let's do the current set. Let's do the current set. Like, who are some people you're keeping an eye on?
So I mostly look at the women's side. I just always liked the women. When I was at Arizona, like the program was awful, and me and my roommate, it'd be a Thursday night and they're playing Furman, and we'd go in, we're sitting right behind the bench. So like we've always just like enjoyed watching the women's game, and then Arizona kind of rose around the Paige Beckers era. So I've kind of focused on that, but I think kind of let's go 2 that are really big, and you're not going to like this because they're Michigan. But Olivia Olson and Silas Swords are probably 2 of the better sellers that I don't think a lot of people would know. So that I think is something to look out for. Joyce Edwards out of South Carolina. She's leading the team, and they're one of the top teams in the country. And then the gal out of Vanderbilt,
you told me that. I think she dropped 50 twice.
She's had a 52-point game and a 55, so broke Juju's record that she broke last year against Stanford. So definitely, again, a lot of the attention's on Cooper Flagg and Dylan Edward,
Dylan
Harper,
and Ace Bailey.
And Ace Bailey, but a lot of the women's game. And because that's going to be like their only card for a while, the women's checklist in Bowman is a little bit smaller, so that might be, some of their only cards that they're going to have.
Outside of this year, any one person in particular you're keeping an eye on, maybe outside of this set, like that you're keeping an eye on? I think Lauren Betts is one that comes to mind.
Yeah, so I would say Lauren Betts is probably like the number one where I'm like, I'll buy any auto that I see. Her base auto is like a great value bin thing. Would be like, I'm sure you could find in a value bin that her auto for like $10, probably less, and it probably sells for 50 to 60.
What?
So she's projected number 1 pick next year, and just a dominant big at UCLA. She is in Bowman as well in her Stanford jersey, but definitely I think a lot of those McDonald's cards get dismissed.
Now you mentioned she's in her Stanford jersey. I'm curious your opinion on this. This is a widely debated topic on which one will be more desired long-term. Bo Nix is one that comes to mind. Yes. You got the Auburn, the Oregon. Auburn's the first, Oregon's the one he'll probably be remembered at. Yeah. Which card holds up longer in the test of time?
So my decision or my thought process has changed over pretty recently, to be honest. And I think Cam Ward was one and Dylan Gabriel were 2 that like really kind of made me iffy. But I think the first logo will carry more significant weight. Just compared to, unless the only like time that I think it would is if that player like wins the Heisman or like wins a national championship for that team. But otherwise, I would always default to the first. Like when you look at sales data on ComC or just like searching their first auto prices, like there's usually a solid floor. Like you're not finding, Cam Ward first autos under like $65, but you can get his second and third years at Miami and Wazoo still, but those you can find at like 40-ish. So I just think the floor is a little bit higher. I think as the product gets older as well, there's not as much available. So lately I was always like, oh, transfer jersey. Because for me personally, and I'm sure for you, like, I like the block A. I like Arizona in my collection. Like, when a guy transfers in, like, I'm not really like, I'll still collect it, but I'm not like aggressive when I'm like, I got to have all the parallels. So,
like when Caleb Downs came, like he's in Bowman 23. I have his super auto, but he doesn't have cards in Bowman 24. So he's got on it. He's got a couple cards at the National, but like he doesn't have a lot of like Ohio State cards now. So like the Bowman Chrome for Alabama is the one I have because it's the only one, but I'm not like I gotta have all these as a guy like Quinshon Judkins, who's in 24, is a Buckeye, or Will Howard is in a Buckeye uniform. So the Will Howard Kansas State stuff, like I just don't care as much about it. It's cool. I got the first Bowman auto, like the super, like that is cool. I got to meet Will at the National, so I'll keep that as like a collector piece. But obviously, I would definitely prefer the Ohio State one. So I think that's going to be the interesting point for me in that conversation is it going to a collector or is it going to a flipper, right? Because I think the flipper says the first is what you want. But as a collector, I want the one, to me, it's more of like I want the Cam Ward Miami autos. That is where I think you'll be remembered. Like I want the Will Howard Ohio State. Like the Kansas State ones don't mean anything to me. Like they mean more to a Kansas State fan. So I think there's going to be a collector base there that will ultimately decide which ones have more long-term power. Yeah,
for sure. And that's kind of the balance when it comes to the portal is like also did, like Jacob Manu, linebacker now at UW, like not my favorite player, but like I'm still going to collect it even though he's at UW, but like again, not super aggressive when I am pursuing it. But like the transfer portal does kind of hurt the collector market in a sense where like I know a lot of people are like, oh, like they left, and kind of burned us or like, not on great terms or chasing the money and where's the loyalty. So I understand that aspect as well.
Yeah, it's a good thing Jim Knowles doesn't have cards because I would not I would not have any more of those remaining in my collection as he goes to Penn State. Julian Fleming's a great example.
Yeah.
Like, he's got Ohio State cards. Met Julian a few times when he was at Ohio State. Good guy. But he's a he went to Penn State. Like I could care less. Like I want nothing to do with those cards. So NFL draft right around the corner. Yes. You are the Mel Kiper of sports cards. I would argue you know more about Mel Kiper than most people. Or I would argue you know more about Mel Kiper himself, but that's a different conversation. Who first and foremost, like there's a million different questions I want to ask you about about the draft. Let's start with somebody that's maybe getting some buzz or is going to be a higher pick than you think they're worth. Like who are you not as hot on that maybe experts or mock drafts are showing you is higher than they're worth?
Yeah, so I think there's one guy who's just been hot like all offseason, mostly because I'm a Tetro McMillan guy, and like all offseason I had to see Luther Burden was the number one receiver in the country. I'm like, Tetro McMillan, he's wide receivers in general, because of your boy Travion Henderson, are kind of falling off the board and going a little bit later. But with Tetro, I was like, he's 6'5", 215, vertical, can grab everything. Like, there's no one else with his skill set, and Luther was always number one. And now he's kind of slid down, but still kind of first round, kind of falling out. But I never was high on him, and I'm like, what is he the best at? That like with a first round pick in the receiver position, like they've got to be a dog for you. So like,
day one starter.
Yeah. So like I was never really high on Luther Burden, and that's probably the one. He is kind of falling out of first round right now, but that was one where I never saw it, and I was like, I don't believe it.
Do you think that has anything to do with the McMillan disrespect?
Yes, that's 100%. Like, if Tetro was in like next year's class, I really wouldn't care as much. But because he was, in that same class, I'm like, man, just doesn't make sense.
What about the QBs? Is there a guy that you think give me a guy in the draft that you think is a little bit later that you like, and maybe a guy that's a little bit earlier that you're like, hey, I'm not really sure this guy's going to be what people think he's going to be.
So there's one who he was top 10 all throughout the offseason in the NFL draft. And I was like, I don't think he's a good quarterback at all. Like, I'm not in on him. Now that he's kind of settled in and had a weak Senior Bowl, Jalen Milroe, I don't hate. Hear me out.
I was waiting for you to say Quinn Ewers.
No. Well, so we'll get to that. But Jalen Milroe, like, was number one on some mock drafts like from a year ago, if you look. And I'm like, I don't think he's a good quarterback, like great athlete, gonna be great in that regard. But when it came to like first round, I'm like, I'm not in. Now he's kind of fallen. Now it's like, he's kind of fallen so hard where, like, thinking from a draft perspective, like if he goes 4th, 5th, 6th round, you're like, it's kind of a steal right here. Like, we've got this athlete, we didn't reach for him, right? So like, you know, he's gonna have a lot of offs, like Joe Milton hype last year. Like, he's gonna have rocket arms, super fast, one of the fastest guys on the team, like all that offseason buzz. I don't hate it. I like where he was in the first, I was like, ugh, I don't want any part of that. But Jalen Milroe there. Quinn Ewers has been getting a lot of buzz this week, and he's meeting with the Cowboys, and that would be like a match made in heaven for like collectors, fans,
for sure.
Hype,
big college,
everything,
big pro team, all
replacing Dak Prescott. So like, there's a lot that would go into that, and he's getting a lot of hype, and I don't hate it as well. I've got a couple of his optic hollow autos that I've actually picked up when he was rumored to potentially transfer Ohio State, Oregon, whatever the case was. So that's when I picked those up, but I don't hate that play as well. You know, I'm curious to see where some of like the back end guys, like I'm a big Curtis Rourke guy out of Indiana, just a big, you know, 6'5", 240 rocket arm. Like everyone tries to kind of chase the Josh Allens and
100%,
and you know the Brock Purdy's of the world, right? And that's going to generate,
you know, Drew Aller.
Yes, so
next year.
So I don't hate him. Like Dylan Gabriel, super small lefty, but quick release. Like I loved him. I invested heavily in him in Oregon this year. So I'm curious to see, is he going to climb up after this combine? And then a guy who's like moving up is like Tyler Shugg, who is from Phoenix. And if you go back 2020 or 2021, there was a high school playoff game, 63-60, him and Brock Purdy in overtime.
That's crazy.
So,
knows it all.
so I've known about him for quite some time. 3 season-ending injuries: Oregon, Texas Tech, Louisville now, and like he's climbing up boards. Like he could go early 2nd round. So he's somebody, and his Bowman price, like you could have gotten his first. He's in the 2021 unlicensed set. His first autos were probably $10 all day, every day. Now the cheapest is like 30 or 40. So he's definitely climbing up.
That's one I would have never guessed. I'm not even sure I know much about him, if at all. So that's the Gabe knowledge right there. That's crazy. What about my guy Will Howard?
So he's always been like, he'll go
about like 6'5".
Yeah.
He's got an arm.
Yeah, he does, and he's always been like, he's a top fit. Him and McCord are always like in that, you know, top 50-ish range. So it's interesting to see where they'll go. And it's, you know, the quarterbacks typically go like 1 through 15 in those picks, and then maybe someone comes back in, and then you kind of see a dry spell for like a round or two. So I'm curious to see if someone goes up in that. You know, we'll see how quarterbacks move in the top 10, I guess. But yeah, I have a couple Will Howard stashed, and Kyle McCord as well, just in case. Because like you said, available on draft night. Like if there's a team that trades up for him or goes up, then you know there's millions of fans that now are excited about.
100%. Now, who you know, outside of the QBs, who are some of the guys that maybe are not on like people's radars, not on most, you know, like your average fan's radar, not your, you know, McMillan, your Abdul Carter, your Travion Henderson. Like, give me somebody that's gonna like be a first rounder, second rounder that like maybe doesn't have a ton of stuff, maybe people aren't thinking about. Like, who are some of the names you're keeping an eye on as we get closer to the draft? Yeah,
so the ones that I'm checking ComC, checking save searches for, both wide receivers. I feel like wide receivers are like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase have kind of helped bridge that market a little bit closer to quarterbacks. So I think wide receivers have been a solid play over the last few years. I'm very high on Savion Williams. I love Savion Williams, 6'5", 225 out of TCU. He was a quarterback in high school, and they use him a lot in the Wildcat at TCU. And he's like a Deebo Samuel, but faster and bigger, and I love everything that he does. So he's someone that I've been buying in combine this weekend. I'm curious to see what he runs in the 40s. People are saying like low 4.4s. He's going to have a monster vertical. I can see the viral content now, like Savion Williams has the highest vertical and runs a 4.4, and he's a 6'5" monster, right? So I hope he kind of moves up to the closer for early second round. And then another one who we had talked about a week or two ago, Matthew Golden. He's been flying up draft boards. Texas. Originally started at Houston, and he was always like the number 2, mostly like a special teams guy. When he transferred to Texas, I was like, this is one of the worst transfers in like the portal. Like there's Silas Bolden and Isaiah Bond and Jonte Cook, and I'm like, he's wide receiver 5 there, and he turned it up in the college football playoffs, and started making a name for himself. He should run a decent 40. So he's been creeping up in the first round, almost like wide receiver 2, Emeka Buka, like range. So that'll be interesting. But I'm watching those two and hope to find some this weekend.
There we go. Abuka's my guy, so I'm hoping we get I hope Emeka goes in a good spot. I hope Travion goes in a good spot. I'd love to see a couple Buckeye skill positions go in the first round, and then you see Will Howard come in, all the defensive guys. But after the Natty, I'm definitely hoping we get a fully loaded Ohio State draft class. I could use a couple guys to collect this year. Now, here in Shipshewana, I've got to ask, what are your expectations for this show? Like, what are you looking forward to? What's on your mind as you head into the show? Rather, you flew across the country to be here, so
yeah.
Obviously super grateful for that. You've got a horse and buggy going by in front of us right now. Just kind of your thoughts on the show, being in a small town. We talked about it. You're from Phoenix. This is not like Phoenix at all. Just some vibes going into the weekend. Yeah,
so Shipshewana, so I got a lot of friends in like the Chicago area and just internet friends all over. You make so many connections, and I've just always, everyone's like, Shipshewana is such a great little vibe. Like, it's just a cool little show. So this has always been like towards the top of my list for shows. So excited to just kind of see what it's all about. Just again, like you said, like small. Like I've never been like a small town like this, and like in the Midwest as well. Like it's 80 degrees back home. It's probably 30, 40 here. So that's an experience in itself. But just I'm excited to see just all the Midwest vibes here, and just from a card perspective. I'm curious to see what the market is like. Like I brought a lot of like my Midwest stuff for trade and stuff, like a lot of Notre Dame. We're pretty close. Hannah Hidalgo, yeah. CJ Carr, and Steve Angeli for sure, and a lot of that stuff. So I'm curious to see like what that scene is like. Just I've never been outside of Arizona for a show, so I'm curious to see what that is like, and then hopefully a lot of college football prospecting and just good vibes. So
I love it. Now this is just a complete one-off thing. It's funny, we had talked about this in person or on the phone the other day, talking about this podcast, what we're going to talk about. And everybody loves a good sit around chat about college football. Where this guy went to school? Where this player went to school? It's like classic. Hey, where did this guy go to school? And we were talking about it the other day, and I've got to ask. I told you I would ask you on the podcast, and I just remembered this. And everybody's got one they kind of keep in the back pocket where they're like, hey, this is my like I'll stump you kind of person.
Yeah. Okay, I'm nervous.
Right, and you're an expert in this field. So I think if anybody can get it, it's you. You weren't in cards at the time, so it's a little different. I remember being in cards. I remember when this happened. 2010, rookie, Mark Mariani. Can you tell me where Mark Mariani went to school?
No. No chance.
I was hoping you were going to get this.
Because
Brian's pulling it up. But
because it came up, I would guess a Notre Dame, but even that is like, or a Midwest school.
So Mark Mariani, Brian can correct me if I'm wrong. I've used this so many times. At this point, I've got to hope to be right, but I believe Mark Mariani was a Pro Bowl punt returner as a rookie in 2010. He played for the Titans. And Mark Mariani, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe went to Montana.
Wow.
Mark Mariani, Montana. Okay. That's always my stump,
Yeah.
You're trying to hey, let's end this game. David Garrard's a fun one I've used over the years. Like Michael Turner, you got me, you had me tricked on that one for a little bit the other day. But I've been waiting. The Mark Mariani one, I was like, if anybody knows it, it's going to be you. But Mark Mariani, 2010 punt returner for the Titans. Like he was a wide receiver as well, but that's always he's got a rookie, and like they had a set back in the day. It was like a box set. I think it was just a Panini kind of like base set. Okay. And I think it was like you got like 50 cards, 100 cards, like Gronk's in it, Tebow's in it, Bradford's in it, and you got like one autograph. And I can picture Mark Mariani's rookie card from this set.
Wow.
So crazy. But we could sit here and chat all day. Super easy to talk with. We love a lot of the same stuff. But as we end it here, as we wrap this up, I want to ask one question. You've been in it a little while. You've worked your way up. You're here in Indiana for a show. Just you've done things the right way. You're getting into the content space, building a big time collection. You flip on ComC, so many great things. Knowing what you know now, if you were going to restart today, what is one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Yeah, I would say, gosh, there's so much. I could have a list here, but I would say don't be scared, take chances. collect what you enjoy. I feel like all those things, don't be scared to take a loss on a card, like take a chance when you're in a value bin and it's like, hey, I don't know, like comps are weird, like just buy it. You're going to learn from it in that space. So take those chances. Don't be scared. Even from a content perspective, that's kind of been something that I've been getting more comfortable. Like just post it, just record yourself. Like I just record my daily card content and upload it. And like sure, you're maybe like embarrassed at first or nervous, like, oh, I hope it gets, a lot of views, but just be yourself, just post it.
Yep.
Don't be scared. Buy what you enjoy. I enjoy college football, and that's what I, live and breathe with. So, just don't get caught up in, chasing what everyone else is chasing. Just stay in your lane, whatever you enjoy. It's going to be way more fun that way.
Yep. Yeah, I love what you said about the value boxes. That's something that will stick with me forever. And I talk about that a lot in my videos is, when you buy a card in a value box, whether it's $1, $5, $10, the value is in learning, right? Does this team sell? Does the jersey number thing work? Does, is this parallel a sneaky parallel? Like the value is in learning. So absolutely love that. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
As we close it up here, where can people find you online?
GabeyCardStacks on everything, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, I'm all over.
Love it. Check him out. But for now, that's all I got, guys. All right, shout out to my guy, GabeyCardStacks, for coming on the channel. If you guys have not already, make sure you guys check him out. A+ guy, super knowledgeable, just a good dude, good people. So make sure you guys check him out if you have not already. But as we mentioned earlier, drop those comments. I want to know, who do you guys want to see on the podcast in the future? We've got a couple other guests lined up here for the next few weeks, so excited to get some of those people on here, hear their stories, and share that with you. So as we wrap up episode 2 here, I want to talk about some of the product dropping this week. Looks like a pretty heavy schedule here. So a couple different things to talk about. Brian's got it on the screen for me. Looks like a few different football products. One on Wednesday, one on Friday. You've got Obsidian football and Illusions football. Really 2 different products here. Obsidian is going to be a breaker's friend. It is 7 cards per box. You can chase color blasts. When you can chase case hits and it's not a lot of cards, breakers normally love this stuff. Obsidian FOTL sold out pretty high. I want to say it was near the 600 mark. That's $80 some a card for 7 cards. I mean, that's pretty, it's going to be pretty hit or miss, especially when you don't have autos of the top 5 guys. But you're chasing Color Blast. You're chasing that Jaden Daniels Color Blast, that Mahomes Color Blast. Those guys being in there, it's definitely a breakers friendly one. Then you got Illusions, like I said, on Friday. That's going to be, you're chasing rookies, inserts, numbers, parallels, autos, patches, jerseys. Again, I love products like that from like a flip perspective, where you're not relying on autos or jerseys to make all of your money back. You've got other things you can flip, create lots for, piece out. I normally like products like that, Elite, Certified, more products like that. Again, where you're not relying on the hit potential to, reimburse yourself to make any of your money back. Finest football. You just had Topps Chrome, Jaden Daniels auto, Caleb Williams autos, Bo Nix autos. You just have autos of a lot of the guys that obviously are not in Panini. Unlicensed, but the only opportunity to get autos of those guys. There's no other way to get Jaden Daniels from a licensed auto perspective. It doesn't exist. You've got like Sage or Leaf, other autos like that, but you don't have any other ones outside of the top. So this is going to be the second potential to pull Daniels from a license or from a top sealed product outside of the Chrome release from a few years ago. So how will that do? What will do better in the long run? It's got to be the Chrome. Just history would tell us that. I haven't seen Finest yet, so I'm excited to see what that looks like and how that one compares to Chrome. I liked Chrome. I thought they did a good job with it. Again, there's just not a lot of options to get autographs of some of those guys, so got to take what you can get at this point. Prism Live Golf and Prism the Rolling Stones Hobby Mega Box. This is likely a sign of what is coming from Panini post NFL and NBA license. What will they get into? What will be some of the products we see released from them? This is probably a pretty good sign. I know there was Live Golf Prism, which comes out this week. There was an FOTL version as well. Again, like there's Color Blast in there. There's some big golfer names in that product. I know Upper Deck has some golf product as well. So how will that product do on the secondary market? Will there be demand for it? Same thing with the Rolling Stones Hobby Megas. What will the demand be like for them? Obviously, Panini knows what they're doing. Those are Prism products. You're not putting those out in a Chronicles or a Donruss or maybe a product that doesn't have quite the brand recognition that a Prism has. So I don't think there's any surprise to anyone that those are Prism products. How will they do? I'm not sure. I will definitely rip a box of Live Golf. I look like there was Color Blast on the checklist. I will definitely rip a box of that just to see what it looks like. Not sure how much have they made of that, but I can't imagine it's an infinite supply. Some decent name auto chases in that. It's probably not a pretty expensive box rip. So to rip a Prism of guys that probably don't have a ton of cards, chasing something cool, cheap rip, we'll definitely try a box of that. Donruss Basketball, Upper Deck Series 2 Hockey, so a couple other ones coming out. Leaf Heroes and Prospects, Football, Hobby, and Jumbo. I like some of the Leaf products from a football perspective, especially if they've got guys in the upcoming draft class. I know Leaf added, I don't know if he's in this, but I know Leaf has had Mahomes autos in 2025. I've seen them in a few different products. Will you get those in Heroes and Prospects? I haven't seen the checklist. So will we get Mahomes in that? Maybe, but the fact that they have Mahomes hasn't signed for Panini in a while, and he doesn't have Topps autographs. So to see Mahomes in any kind of trading card is a win. He has not had autographs in 4 years. I would have checked my exact dates on that, but I think it's 21 or is one of the last years he was in. I don't know if he's in 22. It might have been some of the collegiate product like Flawless. But it's been a little while since we've had Mahomes autographs. So cool to see him in some of the Leaf. You got a Leaf release this week. Donruss Basketball. Again, I talked about it earlier, but not really sure what you're looking for there. It's going to be mostly next days. Donruss is a product for the next day stuff. You know, the Net Marvels have been a popular insert in the past, especially when you had them. I think the first year they did it was like 18-19. I think that was Zion's rookie year. Those are big, not 18-19, 19-20. 18-19's Luka and Trey, 19-20's Zion and Ja. I think it was 19-20, more during the COVID days. Those were big chases back then. Series 2 Hockey, I'm not super familiar with, who's 24, 25. I don't know if, is it Macklin Celebrini, I think is his name. He might be in Series 2. I'd have to look. I don't know if Brian can pull it up before then. 24, 25 Series 2 Hockey. I have to see who's in that. It's one of those like really popular collectors products. We move a decent amount of that, usually a super affordable price. So sounds like it's a pretty big release week. We'll see next week what we end up ripping out of those. See what we see. Hopefully can provide a little insight onto what some of those look like. But definitely a lot of variety this week. You've got golf, football, basketball, baseball. Oh, another one. I want to point this out. Panini Prospect Edition Baseball. I hope I don't butcher the name too much. Is it Roki Sasaki? The pitcher that signed with the Dodgers, of course, making the Dodgers more insane than they already are. But the Japanese baseball pitching prospect, I believe that's one of his first autographs in a minute. Again, I'm not the baseball expert, so I'm not going to tell you about all the autographs he does or doesn't have. But I know he's got autographs and that he's on the checklist with autographs. They released an FOTL version of that product as well. Curious what his stuff is going to sell for. I know Panini is unlicensed from baseball, but he is in that. I think Cruz is in that. Panini's got a couple decent names for Panini Baseball, and it's usually pretty affordable. I think Hobby's sub $200. So with the potential for that, could be a fun rip for the price. I think it's 5-6 autos a box, 4 autos a box, 5 autos a box. It's a decent amount. So definitely a big release week. Find anything on 24, 25?
On hockey?
Yeah. Is it Kachuk? Well, Kachuk wouldn't have cards. He wouldn't have cards in there. All right, Brian gave me the checklist here. Let's see if there's any names that stand out on this. Should ask the hockey expert for some of these. Yeah, this doesn't mention anything. Breaks it down by the teams. Young Guns. Yeah, Celebrini, 451. Macklin Celebrini. That was the number 1 pick. That's the Shark Kid. He's pretty good. Jackets, Cameron Butler. Who else am I looking for in here? Where are my hockey collectors at? I know a couple of these names. Let's see if there's any CBJ guys on here. Couple triples or couple duels. Likely the checklist ones. Celebrini's in it a couple times. So yeah, Macklin Celebrini is definitely the name I know on there. So shout out to Brian for pulling that up. Yeah.
Leaf Poker, I think, is coming out.
Leaf Poker. Jared Blez has autos in that. Yeah. Fellow card collector, Jared Blesnick. When does that come out? Does that come out next week?
Yeah.
Leaf Poker. Yeah. Well, that comes out.
Oh, that comes out tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, that'll come out before this episode releases. So we'll have to take a look at that. I know he signed with that Leaf Poker. Again, a couple different oddball things coming from Panini and Leaf. When Topps owns a lot of the licensing, you're going to see different unique stuff like this. Could be cool. Again, probably not a lot of that kind of stuff on the market. So we'll see. Shout out to everybody who listened this far. A little bit of a longer episode, I think, this time. Again, drop those comments, that feedback. I love hearing it from everybody. I appreciate everybody who's reached out, offered support, feedback, guidance, ideas, recommendations, whatever it is so far. It means a ton. Stay tuned. More cool card content coming very, very soon. New episode drops next week. But for now, that's all I got, guys. Peace.